Hello and welcome to the final video of the Industrial Zone sub-series. We finished building the zone in the last video, and in this one, like I promised, I'll explain in detail how the zone works, where do the roads go, how the four parts of the zone are connected, and so on. Alright, so let's not waste any more time and let's get into it. So this is the main view of the entire zone. Now, as I explained in the previous videos, actually from the first video, the zone is kind of divided into four quadrants by the railroads, as we can see here. Also, on the right side, it's divided by the highway connections. We have the old zone. I'm not going to talk about that. That part of the zone was already featured on this channel in the previous videos. Now, we have the first upper quadrant, first lower, second upper quadrants. Simple. Up here, we have the main highway interchange, which is the main highway connection towards the zone and from the zone as well. The highways go like this towards the new part of the zone. As you can see, there are only three connections to the first upper, first lower, and second lower. The highway connection to the second upper is done through the first upper quadrant, like this. The blue line represents the exit road from the entire zone, pretty much. And down here we also built, I believe in the previous video, kind of a bypass, a secondary exit that alleviates some pressure from the train stations. Pretty much from the train station serving the part of the city across the river. Now, these lines represent the exit roads for the first lower quadrant. As you can see, they can go either to the main highway connection or across the river. Pretty much the same thing for the second lower quadrant and the second upper quadrant. And again, the connection from the first upper quadrant is done through the second upper quadrant, like we can see in here. Now, those were the highway connections. Now, for railroad connections, we have these four train stations. These four train stations are for sending cargo this way, which is into the downtown. Now, we have four of these, which means that each station is servicing one quadrant, like we can see in here. Then we also have these two stations. These two stations are sending cargo trains across the river, and we only have two of them, which means that they both serve two districts like this. The bottom station serves the lower districts or lower quadrants, and the upper station serves the two upper quadrants. Now let's talk about some connections in detail. So now we are looking at the first upper quadrant. In the first upper quadrant, we only have these two main streets like this, represented by the red lines. Now, they are connected from the main highway network like this. As you can see, it splits into both of them. And if traffic wants to go to the second upper quadrant, like I explained before, they need to go through this quadrant like this, as you can see. Now, if traffic wants to go to the station sending cargo across the river, they need to go up like that from the bottom red line and from the upper red line like this. Red streets, sorry. Now, if they want to go downtown, they need to go from the upper red street, sorry, like this, and from the lower red street like this. And if they want to go back into the quadrant, either from some buildings or from the station, then they can just use these two roads represented by the cyan colored street. Very simple. Now we are looking at a very important road junction between the first upper and the first lower quadrants. So, let's talk about road connections from the first lower quadrant. If people want to go to the downtown, they need to use this train station where the red line ends. And they can do so by going through that kind of a complicated road junction that we built in some past videos. And they can do so like this. Now, if they want to go back from that train station, or if they just want to loop back to the quadrant from some buildings, they can do so using these blue-colored roads like that. As we can see, we have three main streets. These lines are going to the three main streets of the first lower quadrant. Now, obviously, we can't omit explaining the road connections from the main highway. They are like this. using the cyan-colored road again. Now, if people from the first lower quadrant want to go across the river or send cargo traffic across the river, they need to use this Miyagi Motors train station that's down here. And they can go to it using this yellow-colored road. Now, this Miyagi Motors train station also services cargo from the second lower quadrant. Traffic from the second lower quadrant arrives from there, as we can see. Now, also, if traffic wants to go from the train station back into the first lower quadrant, they need to use this green-colored road, and they are then going to continue on the same road as the red line and the blue line as well. If they want to go to the second lower quadrant, they need to kind of loop around the Miyagi Motors train station and go down here. I'm going to explain the area down here in just a moment. Now, also this junction is very important for just kind of sending cargo from one district to the other. Now, not all districts are connected between them, kind of like efficiently, but let's explain the roads that are here, are connected. So, this one is for people who want to go from the second lower quadrant to pretty much both the first quadrants, the upper and lower. They are then going to use the roads, the highway connections like I explained before. In here, this connection is for the industrial street on the first lower quadrant that's in the middle of the screen, for people who kind of want to loop around and maybe go to the second lower quadrant. Also, we have this road, which is used for people who want to loop from the second lower quadrant back into it. And also I need to explain that these are the three main industrial streets in the first lower quadrant. Let's move on. Now we are looking at a place between the first lower quadrant and the second lower quadrant. These roads are the roads that are looping back from the Miyagi Motors train station that we saw earlier in the previous shot, and these loop back into the second lower quadrant. Now, we have three main streets in the second lower quadrant, like we can see here. This is the highway connection. These red roads are going straight from the main interchange that services the industrial zone, and again, going into these three main streets. This blue-colored line in here is actually a two-way road, which is kind of uncommon for this design, and it basically allows some of the streets from the first lower quadrant to go both ways. Now, these two arrows at the top of the screen, it allows them, the blue line allows them to go actually to the second lower quadrant directly, and from the bottom yellow roads, it allows this street allows the traffic to go to the Miyagi Motors train station on one road pretty much, so we can simplify things just a little. Also, these yellow lines are showing the highway exits connections. Again, they can go to the bridge across the river, or they can continue back to where the red lines originated from, pretty much. And also, these are the main three streets in the second lower quadrant, which is actually the biggest quadrant in this zone. As we can see, the far right street goes through the Miyagi Motors buildings. Now we are between the second lower quadrant and the second upper quadrant. In here we are going to focus on the second lower quadrant still. So from the previous shot we have seen these three main streets. Now this red line is ending at a very important intersection, which is represented by the red kind of a circle at the end of it. Now, as you can see, there is like a collector road that collects traffic from all three of these roads. Pretty much the same thing goes the other way. Again, a road which is elevated above the red one goes to the other side, back to the junction that we already explained. So this green line, or green road, actually allows traffic to go to the Miyagi Motors train station or loop back into this quadrant. Now, you might wonder that at this place, there is no green connection going to the Miyagi Motors train station. I did this on purpose because we had some traffic issues, traffic jams between this quadrant and the Miyagi Motor Station, and I simply decided that from one of these streets, I'm not going to allow people to use that train station so that there's not that much traffic. They just need to go to the highway. Highway is represented by these two arrows, these two yellow arrows. Again, they can go back to the main interchange, or they can go down here, which is the longer arrow, back to the bridge that we have seen in the previous shot. These sign roads are going from that intersection, which is represented by the end of the red line, and it kind of goes back to the station going downtown. And again, if people want to go back from that train station to this quadrant, to the second lower quadrant, they are going to use the long sign road that goes like this. It goes to the junction, which is next to the Miyagi Motors train station, and it kind of loops back into this quadrant, pretty much on the same road as the green line. Also in here, we must not forget to talk about the other train station in here, which is the train station for the second upper quadrant. As we can see here, there is a very simple road connection going to it and from it back to the upper quadrant. Now, these two train stations are actually pretty much on the same road, but using the traffic manager, I separated those lines or those lanes with the lane connector. So the traffic going to one train station does not intersect or merge in any way with the traffic going to the other station. Now we are at the second upper quadrant, or pretty much at the end of the second upper quadrant. In the second upper quadrant, we only have the two streets, again in here by the blue line, represented by the blue line. They are very close together, and they are the only streets with buildings to them, industrial buildings to them. Now they end with the roundabout, as we can see. This red road is going to the other Miyagi Motors train station that sends cargo across the river. We are going to talk about that station in just a second. Again, yellow streets going to the highway connections. The upper, the one going up, is going to the main interchange, and the arrow facing bottom is going to the bridge across the river. And this green line is going to the train station that we talked about in the previous shot. Now, this part of the roundabout is not really used at all. And this is pretty much the last part of the industrial zone. This is the Miyagi Motors train station, the second Miyagi Motors train station that sends traffic across the river. So, in here by the red line, we have the road that was going from the second upper quadrant. It goes like this to the Miyagi Motors train station. Now, this blue line is going from the first upper quadrant to the Miyagi Motors train station again, and this green line is going back towards the main interchange, but doesn't necessarily need to end there. It doesn't need to go back to the main highway network. This green line can actually, or traffic can use this road to loop back into the upper quadrants, both of the upper quadrants pretty much. There is also another road in here, which is this yellow road. I kind of built this only because I wanted to have a road there. It's not all that efficient. It only services or sends traffic back to one of the streets in the second upper quadrant. So it's not exactly all that efficient. Also, I promised to explain the main interchange, how it works and where does the traffic go from it. Alright, so at the bottom of the screen we can see kind of an interchange or a splitting point, which is actually the green road that we have seen in the previous shot, the one going either from the rest of the zone, kind of, or from the Miyagi Motors train station. Now, from this road, we can go either back to the new zone, to pretty much the entire zone, actually, or we can go to the old zone as well, to the old one. And we can obviously go back to the main highway network like this, to the downtown, kind of facing the downtown. Or the entire city, pretty much. Or we can go back in here like this. This is the direction going pretty much off the map. This is the opposite direction from the city towards the industrial zone. Again, to the old one and to the new one like this. This orange line is going from the old zone. Now, this one, unlike the green one, it doesn't need to loop back into the old zone because that's done using different roads. So it only loops back like this to the new one, if traffic wanted to go to the new one. And obviously it goes back into the town, into the city, or like this to different cities of the map. Obviously, from different cities of the map, we also need to have a connection like this to the new zone and the old zone. And then obviously we have the straight connections that are not really going to the industrial zones at all. Alright, so that was Rockdale's industrial zones. I don't think that I'm going to be expanding the industrial zones anymore. Right now there's around 40,000 workers working in the entire industrial zone, the old one and the new one. So it's probably more than enough. The city right now has around 170,000 people, so it's probably fine. It's big enough for any kind of further expansions of the city. I definitely really liked building this industrial zone. It was quite challenging putting all the roads together. I liked it. Took me a long time, definitely took me a long time. And it obviously took me a long time to put these videos up YouTube as well. Anyway guys, hopefully you enjoyed this. This was the last episode of the Industrial Zone sub-series. Hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next videos. Take care, goodbye.